For generations, the Callahan family kept a peculiar rule. No child of their blood was ever photographed. Not at birthdays, not at weddings, not even as infants. While other families proudly filled albums with memories, the Callahans' walls remained bare. Neighbors whispered that it wasn't modesty or tradition that kept the cameras away, it was fear. And fear that deep rarely comes without a reason. At the edge of town stood the Callahan estate, a sprawling colonial home whose towering hedges seemed less decorative and more like barriers. The house itself was pristine, its white-painted walls immaculate, its windows always closed, its front gate locked with deliberate precision. It gave the impression of wealth and order, but also of a family that wanted the world kept firmly at a distance. Neighbors spoke of the Callahans with a kind of cautious respect. They were polite, never rude, yet their interactions carried an undeniable chill. Invitations to community events were declined, conversations kept short, and questions about their household went unanswered. Most notably, their children were rarely seen. When they did appear, it was fleeting, escorted quickly from carriages to doorways, their faces turned down, their movements quiet. And while every other family in town proudly displayed portraits, school photos, or candid images, the Callahans' walls remained bare. No pictures, no albums, and no visible record that their children had ever existed beyond the estate's gates. Within the Callahan household, an unyielding rule shaped every generation. No child was ever to be photographed. Not as an infant, not in school, not at family milestones. While neighbors filled their parlors with framed images and schoolhouses collected class portraits, the Callahan home contained not a single picture of a child's face. When questioned, rarely, and only by those bold enough to ask, the adults offered the same answer: pictures steal something you can't get back. The phrase was spoken calmly but with a finality that discouraged further discussion. Even private gatherings were governed by this rule. Weddings, birthdays, and holidays inside the estate were completely camera-free. Guests, few as they were required to leave any photographic equipment at the door. Those who forgot learned quickly. One neighbor recalled being asked to destroy a small pocket camera before she was even allowed to enter. In 1892, the Callahans' secretive habit first drew public attention. A small rural school planned its annual class photograph, a simple tradition meant to capture the children together. When the day came, all the students gathered neatly, their faces turned toward the camera. All but one. The Callahan child, a pale, quiet boy, was abruptly pulled away just moments before the shutter clicked. His parents, who had been waiting just outside the schoolhouse, intervened without a word. They led him away so quickly that the teacher barely had time to protest. Later, when the teacher inspected the unused camera, she noticed something unsettling. Deep, jagged scratches marred the lens as if something sharp had raked across the glass. No one admitted to damaging it, and no other students had come near the equipment. The scratches were clustered directly where the boy would have stood in the frame. Over time, those who interacted with the Callahans noticed behaviors that went far beyond avoiding cameras. Every child seemed to shy away from any reflective surface. Mirrors, polished windows, even still water. If confronted with their own reflection, they would look down immediately or step aside as if instinctively avoiding eye contact with themselves. Visitors to the estate described the interior as strangely devoid of personal touches. Any picture frames that did exist were either empty or turned face down, lined along shelves like placeholders for memories that had been deliberately erased. It wasn't simply that there were no photographs. It was as though the family went out of their way to remove anything that could capture or reflect an image. Rumors spread of old Callahan albums hidden away in locked cabinets. Some who claimed to have seen them swore that pages were violently ripped out, leaving jagged edges and faint stains where photographs once might have been. Whatever those images contained, someone wanted them destroyed and forgotten. As the years passed, the town began weaving its own explanations for the Callahans' unsettling rules. The most common theory was rooted in old superstition, that cameras could steal a piece of a person's soul. Many rural families once believed such things, but the Callahans' intensity, their absolute refusal, their visible fear, suggested something far deeper than mere folklore. Another story claimed that an ancestor, experimenting with one of the earliest cameras, captured an image that revealed something unnatural, something no one was meant to see. Some say the photograph showed a child standing normally, yet in the glass plate's reflection stood another figure entirely, thinner, darker, and smiling in a way the child was not. But the most unsettling legend whispered in hushed voices was this: the Callahan children's reflections weren't their own. Mirrors and cameras didn't simply show them, they showed something else looking back, something that shouldn't exist outside the frame. Long after the Callahan estate was abandoned, a group of urban explorers forced their way inside. Most of the house was predictable: dust-covered furniture, rotting curtains, and collapsed ceilings. But in the attic, they discovered something far stranger: a locked door reinforced with heavy iron bolts. When they pried it open, they found an entire room no one had entered for decades. Inside were stacks of broken and shattered glass plates, the kind used in early photography. Many were smashed beyond recognition, but a few still bore faint, ghostly images. The figures they showed looked childlike in shape but were unnaturally blurred, their limbs too long, their faces obscured as if they had moved, or as if something had distorted them intentionally. The walls themselves were covered with frantic, hand-scrawled warnings. Over and over, in uneven strokes, someone had written, "Don't look. Don't keep them. Don't keep them." In 1928, during the town's annual Harvest Festival, a visiting photographer unknowingly triggered the last known event tied to the Callahan family. He was documenting the celebration, capturing candid shots of the crowd, when his camera lens briefly settled on a small, pale child standing near the edge of the square, a Callahan. Knowing the family's reputation, he kept the act secret and quickly clicked the shutter before turning away. That night, witnesses said the child was seen leaving with their parents as usual. But by morning, the child was gone. The Callahans offered no explanation, and within days, the entire family left town. When the photographer developed his film, he made a chilling discovery. In the frame where the Callahan child had stood, there were two figures. One was clearly the child from the festival, but beside them was another, a figure just as small, but darker, less distinct, its face obscured. The two appeared to be holding hands. After the 1928 incident, the Callahan estate was abandoned. The family vanished without explanation, leaving no forwarding records, no public sale of their property, and no traceable descendants. The house itself still stands, though overgrown hedges and boarded windows keep it hidden from the casual passerby. Yet even in its silence, the estate's reputation persists. Urban legends claim that anyone who dares to take a photograph near the property may find more than just the crumbling mansion in their image. Extra faces, pale, indistinct, and childlike, sometimes appear in the windows or hovering at the edges of the frame. Some visitors tell an even more unsettling story. They return home, review photos taken miles away, and notice faint, blurred figures standing in the backgrounds of their own family pictures. Small figures, child-sized. And when they count the people present that day, they insist with certainty, those children were never there.